Welcome everyone to today's deep dive. We're really excited to have you with us today because we're exploring a fascinating thematic document titled Day 128.
Yeah, Day 128, it's essentially this master key to managing our minds.
Exactly. And the sources we're pulling from today are just this incredibly diverse stack. We've got philosophy from Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, modern memoirs from Stephen Pressfield and Neil Peart, plus some history and aphorism thrown in.
It's a heavy-hitting list for sure.
Right. And to kick things off, I want to share this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who he once did some really ruthless mental math.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, he calculated that for every single minute you spend angry, you are permanently deleting 60 seconds of happiness from your life. 60 seconds, poof, just gone.
It is such a stark, unforgiving equation, isn't it? I mean, Emerson is essentially giving us a unit of measurement for a poorly managed interior life. When you get furious at, say, someone cutting you off in traffic, you're trading a full minute of your own peace at an absolute premium price for a minute of anger. And the most agonizing part of that accounting is that you are entirely the one at the register.
Right, like the driver who cut you off didn't reach into your brain and steal your joy. You spent that currency yourself.
Exactly. Which brings us to the foundational argument of this entire source text. Basically, your inner life determines your outer life, not the reverse.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are about to look at how history's greatest thinkers and, modern creatives tackled the internal steering wheel of life.
Yeah, and it runs completely counter to how most of us live. I mean, we tend to think, well, if my environment improves, my mindset will improve.
Oh, absolutely. Like if I get a better job or a nicer house, I'll be happy.
Right. But modern figures like Wim Hof, they frame this backward logic with incredible urgency. Hof insists that the external world is largely fixed. You cannot control the cold, you cannot control the economy, and you certainly cannot control other people.
So true.
But perception is completely malleable. He says, grab the wheel of the mind, and we can steer the direction of where our life will go.
So we're moving from Emerson's whimsical math of those 60 seconds to the urgent, practical reality of how we actually control that mental currency.
Yeah, and if owning our response keeps us in the driver's seat, Epictetus gives us the actual mechanics of the steering column.
He does with his razor-sharp philosophical blade.
Exactly. He poses these questions: where is good? In our reasoned choices. Where is evil? In our reasoned choices. Where is everything else, like things that are neither good nor evil, outside of our reasoned choice?
So he's telling us that good and evil don't exist in a hurricane or a pandemic or a cruel neighbor. They exist solely in how you choose to process those events.
Right. And to understand how radical that is, we have to look at the Stoic concept of the hegemonicon.
The hegemonicon. That translates roughly to your governing faculty.
Yeah, your governing faculty where judgment lives. And the hegemonicon isn't just your brain. It's a very specific mechanism. It's the gap between a stimulus and your reaction.
Oh, like the bouncer at the door of your mind deciding what gets let into the club.
That's a perfect way to put it. Epictetus argues that this governing faculty is the only thing you truly own. And if external events don't dictate your character, then absolutely no circumstance can ever strip your character away. It's incredibly liberating, but also, well, deeply uncomfortable.
Wait, yeah, I have a massive problem with this idea. Like, I want to play devil's advocate for a second. This is a beautiful idea, but isn't it also completely terrifying?
It is a lot to take on.
Right. If I accept this fully, I can never again blame a bad mood on a terrible commute or a rude coworker. I am 100% on the hook for my own misery.
This raises an important question, though. The discomfort you're feeling is the primary hurdle here. But taking the wheel isn't about ignoring reality.
Okay, so it's not just toxic positivity.
No, not at all. It's not a delusional exercise where you pretend the commute wasn't gridlocked. It is entirely about owning the response. Drawing a hard boundary between the event, which is just data, and the narrative your hegemonicon lets in.
So if taking the wheel is the goal, what happens when we let go? Like, what happens when our interior disorder just goes on autopilot?
Oh, Stephen Pressfield has a brilliant, literal example of this in his memoir. It's a perfect transition from Epictetus's conscious choice to subconscious chaos.
Right, this is the story from his late 20s.
Exactly. He found himself living in a boarding house in Durham, North Carolina. And this wasn't just a regular apartment building. It was basically a halfway house surrounded by patients transitioning out of state mental hospitals.
Which is wild because he wasn't a patient himself.
No, he was just a guy trying to figure out his life.
Right.
But he had this realization about the law of metaphor. He arrived there because his external environment had shaped itself to perfectly reflect his internal disorder.
Oh, wow. So he was internally unmoored, and he just navigated his life straight into a building filled with unmoored people.
Precisely. But the turning point is this dream he has. It's fascinating. In the dream, his shirts start neatly folding themselves, and his boots crawl out from under the bed and polish themselves.
That is so specific and weird.
Right. But he wakes up with this sudden realization and says, I'm ambitious. I have ambition. That dream was his hegemonicon, his reasoned nature, speaking to him in the unconscious language of images.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like your mind is a movie projector. If the film reel inside is tangled and messy, you're going to project a chaotic movie onto the walls of your actual physical life.
That is such a great analogy, and most people just spend their lives trying to clean the movie screen instead of fixing the reel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Pressfield's revelation came at a low point. So it seems like this establishes a causal link, right? The interior life doesn't just spontaneously organize itself. It usually requires severe pressure or catastrophe to be forged.
Yeah. Sadly, it rarely happens on a sunny Tuesday. Neil Peart, the late drummer for Rush, gave us a visceral explanation of this in his book Ghostwriter.
This was after his solitary motorcycle ride across North America, right?
Yes. After the unimaginable tragedy of losing his daughter and then his wife within a year. Out there on the road, he started thinking about the biology of seeds.
Oh, right, the ponderosa pines.
Right. He observed that ponderosa pines need literal fire to germinate. The heat melts the resin so the seeds can release. Then he thought about desert plants that need flash floods to violently strip away their husks, and fruit seeds that must pass through an animal's digestive system.
Fire, flood, and, well, shit.
Exactly. The unavoidable ordeals of new growth. We see this play out in human psychology all the time. The Daily Stoic provides these intense accounts of lives tested.
Like Captain Brett Crozier.
Yes, and I want to be clear here. We're just impartially reporting on the content provided in the sources. We're not taking sides on any of the politics surrounding these figures. We're just looking at their internal reactions.
Right. For you listening, we're totally neutral here, just conveying the ideas from the text.
So with Captain Crozier, he was stripped of his command of the USS Theodore Roosevelt after trying to protect his crew during a pandemic outbreak. His career took a massive hit, but his internal ledger was clean, so the external catastrophe didn't destroy him.
The text also mentions Randy Blythe, the singer who was arrested.
Right. He voluntarily faced a manslaughter trial in a foreign country because his internal sense of accountability demanded it. And then you have Lieutenant Dan Carey, spending 2,022 days as a POW.
Over 2,000 days, I can't even imagine.
External catastrophe forces you inward. Carey and his fellow prisoners had their external economy totally stripped, so they built a strict internal order to survive.
And Marcus Aurelius basically did fire drills for this kind of stuff, didn't he?
He did. Even as a boy, he practiced for disaster by sleeping on a hard mattress. So later, as emperor during the Antonine Plague, when the economy collapsed, he didn't panic. He just sold off the imperial jewels and his wife's robes without a second thought.
Because he already knew that very little is needed to make a happy life.
Exactly.
But wait, so if the seed needs the fire, does this mean we should actively go out and seek suffering? Like invite disaster into our lives? Or is the lesson just to be like Marcus Aurelius and do fire drills so we don't panic when the real flames show up?
Definitely the latter. The texts aren't saying to seek out misery life provides enough fire on its own. It's about shifting how we view character. Looking at figures like Marcus Aurelius facing plagues, it's easy to feel paralyzed by the distance between our reactions and theirs.
Oh, definitely. I get mad when my Wi-Fi drops.
Right. But we must shift from viewing character as an innate superpower to viewing it as a messy, built pattern.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Author Robert Greene has a really unsentimental rule about this, right?
Yeah, Greene argues that character is revealed through actions over time under stress. If someone repeatedly disappears under pressure or turns belligerent, it's a compulsive signature, not an isolated incident.
So character is the pattern.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how the Daily Stoic offers a radical correction about Cato. He was legendary for his self-discipline in Rome, but he wasn't perfect. He lost his temper. He miscalculated.
Oh, that makes me feel a little better. Even the greats messed up.
Right. The purpose of studying great lives isn't to feel inferior. It's to realize greatness is a pattern built imperfectly over time.
Ta-Nehisi Coates had a great line about this regarding Jackie Robinson. He said, "Not even Jackie Robinson was always Jackie Robinson."
That is such a brilliant way to phrase it. Seneca buried a child and faced exile. He didn't magically become a saint through that suffering. He just became more practiced at handling it.
It's like going to the gym. Seneca didn't walk in and immediately bench press 500 pounds of grief. He was just highly practiced at lifting heavy emotional weights.
The daily reps are everything, building that internal shock absorber.
So we've talked about the famous names Marcus, Seneca, Epictetus, who wrote the books and left the quotes. But what about the people who actually lived this pattern best without ever taking credit?
This is one of my favorite parts of the text. The quiet heroes. Marcus Aurelius' mother, Domitia Lucilla, he credits her deeply. She was generous, deeply reverent, and he said she was incapable of even conceiving of doing wrong.
And she lived simply despite her massive wealth, right? Like completely ignoring the conspicuous consumption of imperial Rome.
Yes. And it wasn't a performance for her. It was her character. The Daily Stoic pays tribute to the anonymous generations of wives, mothers, and daughters who modeled Stoic virtue without public applause or any written record.
There's that Thomas Merton quote in the text. Pride makes us artificial. Humility makes us real. Domitia was real, while the consumers around her were just artificial.
Beautifully said.
And Jessamine West said that fiction reveals truths, reality obscures. It feels like philosophy just names the truths these quiet heroes simply embodied naturally. So what does this all mean? We revere these ancient texts, but were the best Stoics actually the ones who were too busy living the philosophy to bother writing it down?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. For these anonymous heroes, the work was entirely interior. They needed no public audience. They just steer the wheel.
Which brings us to synthesize this whole overarching journey we've been on today. I want to reiterate to you listening. The wheel is yours. Wim Hof's wheel is in your hands, and Emerson's 60 seconds are yours to spend.
There's a quote from James Clavell's Shogun that sums up the stakes here. He asks, "Are we but blossoms taken by the wind while only the mountains and stars are everlasting?"
Oh, that's heavy.
It is. Wealth and empires pass, but character passes more slowly.
Yeah, and we have to remember the origins of Stoicism. Zeno discovered it after a literal shipwreck. Cleanthes did manual labor. Epictetus was a slave. They all discovered that when you're stripped of external comforts, the inner compass is all that remains.
Shakespeare really nailed it when he wrote, "Our remedies often ourselves do lie." And Naval Ravikant's ultimate conclusion builds on that. He says the goal is just to accept. Accept that the seed is waiting for exactly the fire you are already standing in.
Accept the fire. That is such a paradigm shift.
It really is.
Well, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, building on Robert Greene's idea of character as a pattern. If the mountains are real and everlasting and we are just blossoms taken by the wind, the only thing you can actually control is what kind of blossom you are.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, if character is just the pattern of choices you make when the stakes are real, what invisible pattern did you subconsciously weave today? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.